I also worked with an acrobat, Yuval. He works out in Las Vegas. He's actually a professional acrobat for the show Les Rêves at the Wynn Hotel. He's also coached Ito and spoken with Ito, and Yuval was just incredibly helpful. I met with him in person when I went out to Vegas last fall, and again, it's the same sort of thing. Like, he can give you the progressions that are the most efficient and most effective. Not to mention the fact that you start talking with a coach who has the skills and abilities that you're looking for, and who has years and years experience with those skills. And I mean, that firsthand experience is just absolutely invaluable. So I don't know, I'm kind of rambling right now, but the point is, like, getting that coaching, even if you think you're really good, there's always going to be someone better, and just getting that coaching and investing in that coaching, it just helps you stop wasting a lot of time, just kind of get to your goals a lot faster. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that coaches are good at is pointing out the things that you don't want to admit, the flaws. I know. Oh,
absolutely, yeah. I mean, and I'm sure we're all guilty of it. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, we're all guilty of it. Like, I don't want to work front squats or something like that because I don't like the exercise. It doesn't feel good. Well, a coach will tell you, yeah, you better be working front squats. Same thing with, like, hand balancing. Same thing with any aspect of training. Like, there's just certain things that you need to work on, and it takes a coach to really sort of open your eyes for that. Yuval particularly, he showed me how lacking my mobility was in my shoulders. I could still do a handstand, but I think it was a big limiting factor for a lot of my one-arm handstand work. And seeing his, like, world-class mobility and world-class sort of, like, alignment in his handstand was just sort of like a slap in the face, real eye-opening, and like, hey, I really need to work on this if I ever expect to be, if I ever expect to progress to the next level. So,
yeah, well, let's talk about building a strong foundation. You're talking about building a straight line on a handstand, and I know how complicated that can be, because people don't realize, once you get your first handstand, you're still a decade away from that perfect handstand. So you know what I mean? So let's talk about kind of building a strong foundation and some of the skills that you preach over on your side. Let's start with a handstand.
Sure thing. In terms of building a strong foundation for a handstand, again, like I said, I kind of break it up into getting a good position and then finding the balance. So in terms of getting a good position, what I tell people is that, and again, this is one of the concepts from Yuval. The line in a handstand, having a nice, good, straight, solid line, it's always a work in progress. It's always something that you can do a little bit better on each and every time. Not only a matter of building the mobility to get that position, but also getting the strength to hold that position, getting the awareness to hold that position. In terms of building up the mobility in particular, if we talk about the upper body, let's talk about just from the inside out. First, like I said, people need good thoracic mobility. So that upper spine mobility, we need to be able to extend. We need to be able to rotate an upper spine. If that's a little off, then everything, from inside out is going to be off. So I'll have people do thoracic mobility drills. So tons of stuff you can find online for that. Eric Cressy's got a whole bunch of good ones that I like to use. So we loosen that up. Then moving outwards, again, we're not even talking about the arms or anything yet, but we start looking at the shoulder blades next. So now that the thoracic spine is moving around well, is the shoulder blade able to move around well and move around in its full sort of range of motion? A lot of times, a lot of people, myself included, a little bound up, or you might need a little bit more warm up before things are moving around well. But the shoulder blades need to be able to move fully, especially, of course, in that overhead flexion movement. So when you're reaching your arms up overhead, the shoulder blades need to be able to move in the proper position. So if they're not, again, we need to start digging into some of the muscles around there, the rhomboids, the traps, levator scap, things like that, so that the shoulder blades can then move around. Once the shoulder blades can move around, then, of course, we got some of the other bigger muscles that lock things into place. The chest, the pec minor, the shoulder, the lats. The whole shoulder is a very complex joint, so there's a lot of things that stabilize the shoulder but also bind the shoulder up. So just continuing to work outwards, you start digging into some of those other bigger muscles so you can then continue to open up the shoulders. Anyway, start going through all that, and eventually, you start getting a better and better line with your handstand. So again, that's always a work in progress, but we need to be able to kind of see like where we're at and what we're trying to go for in terms of the position. So we work on the shoulder position, we work on the upper body position. We also work on, of course, the midsection position, the whole idea of having a hollow body, of having control over your torso. That one is something that people can pick up fairly easily in many cases in terms of how to feel that position when they're sitting on their back. I know CrossFit is really big on the hollow body rocks, but then we have to be able to hold that position when we're upside down in our handstand. So again, the combination of finding the shoulder position, finding the midsection position, and just being aware of everything when we're upside down is sort of one of the first steps, one of the first things we kind of do to set the foundation. With the position sort of taken care of with different drills, we also work on the balance. So, hey, do I know where the balance is in my hands so that I can, hold the handstand much better and hold the handstand efficiently? With that, again, we have various drills as well, things like the frog stand, or people call it the crow pose in yoga, and different things like that, where you're building up the fine motor control and you're building up the strength and sort of capacity to be able to hold that. So you take that position, you take those positional drills and building up the strength in those, and you take up the balance drills and you build up the strength in those, and combine them together is where you really kind of build up the strong foundation for the handstand. And then once we start building up the strong foundation and people are actually holding things out in the open and they're able to kind of have something they can play around with, that's when we start fine-tuning it, cleaning it up, getting it a better line, even more so. And, just progress from there. Like I said, it's always a work in progress, but you just need to be able to kind of know where you're going towards in order to know what you need to fix. So.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that it's a work in progress because, I worked for the better part of a decade with my bowed back handstand, and now I'm having to undo what I learned. And it's really challenging to take something that you've been doing for so long and then try to tweak it a different direction and really achieve that perfect hollow position and that really good line as well.
Oh, absolutely, man. Like I said, I'm in the same boat. Like I said, there's been plenty of things, plenty of skills that I've worked on and said, oh, that was good. And then, something else comes about, some concept, or again, like we talked about before, like coaching, some coach comes up and says, hey, that's okay, but, we need to do it this way and better. Like I said, in particular, when I was studying under him, again, he talked about bent arm versus straight arm strength. And the whole concept of like, I should really be working more of this straight arm strength. This bent arm pressing into handstand isn't what I should be working for. I should be working for the straight arm press. So, like I said, you just keep on working and keep on progressing. And you got to enjoy the journey, or you're going to go crazy in the process.
Yeah, patience is key, isn't it?
Absolutely, man. I'll tell you that. So,
all right. So we talked a little bit about the handstand. Any tips on how you get a freestanding handstand push-up that our listeners can use?
In terms of the freestanding handstand push-up, I tell people first, of course, you need the strength of a handstand push-up up against the wall, and then of course you need the balance of a handstand. So you can kind of work both side by side. The biggest thing that I'm saying for a lot of handstand push-up work right now, and what I'm saying in all my seminars, is that I would like to see a lot more people working full range motion, so putting their hands on chairs, boxes, set of parallettes, and getting their hands all the way down to their shoulders. I see a lot of people who only work their handstand with their hands on the ground, head to the ground, and if you think about it, that's really just a half range of motion. It's still going to be impressive if you do, hands on the ground, head to ground, freestanding handstand push-up. But I want people to kind of go above and beyond that, challenge themselves even further. So if you build up the strength to be able to do that easily, then you build up the balance in your handstand to be able to hold it for a good 15, 20 seconds at least, then it's going to start to come together a little more naturally in terms of the handstand push-up. In terms of specifics for the freestanding handstand push-up, again, with my tutorials online, you can see some of the pictures. I tell people to keep their elbows tucked in slightly. A lot of times people will try to keep their body totally vertical and kind of go up and down, sort of put their hands right between their head. What happens there is their elbows start to flare out. And if you looked at what their arms were doing with their elbows flaring out, you would never press anything like that. Like if you were pressing a barbell over your head, you would never flare your elbows out to the side with your wrist cranked. It just isn't a strong position. So what we want instead for the freestanding handstand push-up is the elbows tucked in slightly, and with that being the case with the elbows in that position, your head and shoulders are going to dip down and forward of your hands, and your body is actually going to be at a slight angle back towards your feet. That's going to keep you balanced kind of forward and backward of your hands. So with that body position, you lower yourself down till your shoulders touch parallettes if you're on parallettes, or your head touches the ground, and then you just press right on up. And during that whole time, whether you're lowering down or moving up, you're looking to keep the balance on your hands. The same exact place you have your balance in the handstand, you got to maintain that balance the whole time. If you drop down and fall back on the heel of your hands at any time, you're kind of dead in the water. So just fight for the control each and every time. I find a lot of times when people start off, and I know me personally when I first started off with the freestanding handstand push-up, I would lower down fine, no problem. I'd be balanced. The weight would be up on the fingers and knuckles of my hand where it should be. And then I would press up, and I would press immediately back to my feet. Like I couldn't kind of arch up and get up and back into the handstand. So that's definitely a challenge when people are first starting off. It can be alleviated by, again, building up the strength again in just a regular handstand push-up up against the wall. So you can sort of take out the whole balance challenge out of it and just work on the strength and increasing that strength. So.
Yeah, it's an awesome move. I know how frustrating that freestanding handstand push-up can be, but I always like to look at things in terms of whether it's going to benefit you more than something else. So if you have to pick a pressing exercise, I love handstand push-ups because somebody can press a barbell that's body weight and not be able to do a single freestanding handstand push-up. But take a guy who can do a freestanding full-range handstand push-up and have him press body weight, and it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, no, definitely. You definitely see a combination of that. I would say, though, that the one thing they're very interesting, and of course, I like to work both barbells and gymnastics. I like to kind of combine the two things, but I'll say that there is a big carryover. The biggest differences being, of course, if you take a freestanding full-range handstand push-up and you're on parallettes, of course, you need the balance to be able to hold in the handstand, and that's the challenge there. I would say, though, that the challenge with a bodyweight press with a barbell is the challenge of stabilizing the midsection.
Yeah.
The midsection really is not underneath the same sort of vertical loading as it is when you're pressing a barbell. I'm sorry, when you're doing the handstand push-up, it's not under the same load as when you're pressing a barbell. So you'll definitely see like the strength kind of carry over with the shoulders, but there is sort of like that just little bit of, hey, this is a little more stressful on the midsection, this is a little more stressful on my balance. So like I said, it's just sort of a different challenge for each one. So
sure. So we covered an example of like a straight arm and a bent arm press. Let's cover one of each on a pull. Let's talk about one of my favorite ab exercises, the front lever.
Okay. So in terms of like the pulling exercises, again, we're looking to keep the elbows totally blocked out, and the front lever, for instance, that's if listeners aren't familiar, it's the gymnastics exercise where our body is horizontal to the ground, stomach facing upwards. We're holding onto the rings with our arms totally locked out. So again, it's a position that's very intense on the shoulders and the back. And again, we keep our elbows locked, and we're able to put a tremendous amount of work on those stabilizing muscles throughout the shoulder. A lot of times what I tell people to do is to see if they can pull themselves up through the front lever position into like an inverted hang position with those elbows straight. Because again, in order to be able to do that, you really have to pull the shoulders down and back and really engage them and set them in the socket to be able to pull up through that position, and then of course hold the front lever position by itself. Working on those straight arm movements and pulling up through them, again, it gets the shoulders that much stronger, and it helps tremendously when you go back to the bent arm pull-ups and things like that, specifically, or even like muscle-ups, of course, things like that. That's obviously a big thing that a lot of CrossFitters really want to get. They want to get their first muscle-up, and one of the biggest kind of hurdles I see for good pull-ups, good muscle-ups, things like that, is the ability to set that shoulder down into socket, so kind of set the shoulders down and back and hold them there when they're doing a pull-up or a muscle-up. So the straight arm work can help develop those muscles further. So.
Absolutely, and not to mention it's one of the best ab exercises out there.
Yeah, it's definitely a pretty tough one. So it's like one of those, what do they call it, dragon flags in midair. So.
Right, exactly. I say it's definitely a step up from that dragon flag. Yeah, so front levers are pretty self-explanatory in terms of just building that strength. How about the coveted one-arm chin? Why don't you give us your tips on getting your first one-arm chin?